everyone, welcome back to another episode of Doodling Through Education. Today we have a science episode for you, and for my CC students, this is week 23 of the memory work for science, and that means that we'll be talking about conduction, convection, and radiation. So remember, if you haven't subscribed already to the Doodling Through Education channel, go ahead and do so you never miss an episode from us. And on that note, let's go ahead and start doodling. So the main question we want to answer today is, how does heat flow? But before we can jump into this, we must first understand what heat is. All matter in the universe is made up of atoms and molecules. These building blocks are constantly moving, which then creates thermal energy or heat. The faster the atoms are moving, the more thermal energy they have. Now that heat has been defined, we will talk about how heat moves and how it is transferred. There are three ways in particular, but let's start by talking about conduction. Conduction is the transfer of heat between substances that are in direct contact with each other. If an object can rapidly transfer heat through it, we call this a good conductor. An example of a good conductor would be metal. Conduction occurs when a substance is heated and then particles gain more energy. When they gain more energy, they then vibrate more. These molecules then bump into nearby particles and transfer some of their energy to them. This then continues and passes the energy from the hot end down to the colder end of the substance. For this conduction to take place between two objects, they must be touching each other. So let's look at some examples of conduction. One example of conduction would be when you use a heating pad on the sore muscles of your back. As this heating pad heats up, it then transfers the heat to your back because it is in contact with it. Another example would be the heat from a hot liquid that makes the cup itself hot. If you grab a cup that has hot coffee or tea in it, the cup itself will be hot and your hands will feel it. Which is why you need to be careful if you are drinking something hot from a mug. Another example would be when you are holding chocolate candy in your hand. If you hold this chocolate long enough, eventually it will melt because heat is conducted from your hand to the chocolate. Let's move on and next talk about convection. Thermal energy is transferred from hot places to cold places by convection. Convection occurs when warmer areas of liquid or gas rise to cooler areas in the liquid or gas. Cooler liquid or gas then takes the place of the warmer areas which have risen higher. This results in a type of circular pattern that is continuous. Let's talk about some examples of convection. One would be boiling water. If you look at a pot that has water boiling, the heat passes from the burner into the pot, heating the water at the bottom. What happens then? The hot water then rises and the cooler water moves down to replace it. And this continues to happen, causing a circular motion. Another example of this would be the steam that you see when you are drinking a cup of that hot tea or coffee. The steam indicates that heat is being transferred into the air and the liquid itself is cooling. And another example would be of ice melting. If you think about it, ice melts because heat moves to the ice from the air. As a result, the ice melts from a solid to a liquid. And last, let's talk about radiation. Radiation is a method of heat transfer that does not rely upon any contact between the heat source and the heated object, as is the case with conduction and convection. Heat can be transmitted through empty space by thermal radiation, and this is oftentimes called infrared radiation. The best way to describe this is through some examples of radiation. So let's think about a campfire. You are sitting around on a cool summer evening around a campfire with your family, eating marshmallows. What do you feel from the campfire? You feel heat emitted from the campfire. Another example would be the emission of heat from a hot sidewalk. Sometimes, on a very hot summer day, you're walking down a sidewalk and you can feel the heat coming up from that hot sidewalk. Another example would be space heaters. On a cool winter afternoon, using a space heater in your room helps produce radiant energy to warm you up. Heat created by the body can also be radiant energy. And the sun produces radiation as well. The heat from the sun travels through open space or empty space and heats the earth. And that is all we have for today, talking about conduction, convection, and radiation. Think about this as you go about your week. Think about the different examples in the world around you of each of these. And if you come up with an idea of an example that I didn't say, you can go ahead and drop that in the comments. I'd love to see your ideas as you brainstorm with your family and your friends. So on that note, remember to be kind, follow God's will, and take care. Bye.